Welcome, guys. A proper welcome and a proper happy Sunday to you all. I hope you've all had the most lovely weekend. Thank you so much for joining today. I am so beyond excited for this workshop, and I just wanted to say a massive thank you for giving up the next 45-ish, maybe an hour, absolute maximum. Of your time because I really appreciate it and I think you are going to get a lot out of this. I have so much respect for anyone willing to give up their time and spend their energy and attention on me to learn. So I really love that. So thank you so much. Okay, I was just checking the chat just to make sure everyone could hear me. Amazing. So in terms of what we are going to be going through today, three core things that are built into a number of different things. So number one is I want to really give you this understanding behind what the real trigger is behind your overeating. And side note, there probably won't just be one thing. The second thing I want to equip you with is the tools, the habits, understanding, almost the mindset you need to start to gain some healthy control over your food. And last but not least, I want to go through some coaching principles that I live by, that I coach by with my clients, to allow you to consistently maintain a sensible calorie deficit and therefore see consistent results over time rather than this kind of on again, off again switch that so often happens with dieting. So, most of you are here because you struggle with overeating in some capacity, and it is the thing that is getting in the way of where you'd like to be with your fat loss or where you'd like to be with your relationship with food. What I want to really help you understand is that it's really common to blame your overeating and to therefore look at a fix for overeating because that's what you believe is getting in the way of where you'd like to be. What I want to help you understand and what I want to demonstrate throughout this workshop is that overeating doesn't exist in isolation. And therefore, when it comes to looking at solutions to repairing your relationship with food, lessening your overeating, and ultimately establishing that consistency that I just mentioned, we have to look beyond overeating. We have to look at the things that come with overeating. And this is what I mean by that, is that these feelings, thoughts, and emotions that you can see on the screen, for 99% of us, come alongside the overeating. What we know is that one bout of overeating, or whatever you'd like to call it, one day, 1 week, one holiday, one weekend, one bout of overeating doesn't take away from our long-term progress over a 6-month period. We know that. But what we do know is that for people who struggle with overeating, for people who struggle with their relationship with food, it's never just kind of one day. It's one day turning into 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, cycles, depending on like it affects people very differently. But that's not the overeating, that's the feelings that come with it. Because when we overeat, for most of us, myself included in the past, we experience huge amounts of guilt and shame. We feel physically uncomfortable as well, and we often experience a distorted body image. All of these are feelings that prevent it from just being that one bout of overeating. All of these are feelings that hinder our ability just to go back to normal and just to kind of crack on with the rest of our day or the rest of our week. So when it comes to doing the work on your overeating, we need to be considering these kind of wider things that exist within the same bubble as our overeating in a way. Because one of the biggest things I say to my clients, especially when we start working together with this sort of specific work, is we have to recognize that working on your overeating, progress comes in two ways. So it's very easy to think, oh, I'm going to do the work on my overeating and that means I'm never going to overeat again. And we kind of romanticize that goal to aim towards. And that's really ultimately not the case, is that when we do the work on our relationship with food and our overeating, progress comes in two ways. Like I said, number one is we lessen the frequency of overeating. Yes, that's a big, big, big part of it. But the second way in which progress comes is our ability to be able to nurture ourselves and support ourselves and respond with compassion when we do overeat. Just like what I alluded to there, aiming to get to a place of never, ever, ever overeating ever again is unrealistic. Everyone overeats sometimes, myself included. So, whilst this journey for you will be, yes, lessening your overeating and starting to feel more in control around food, it will also be you having the tools so that if and when you do overeat, it becomes this thing that you can support yourself through in a kind and peaceful way. And it can be this thing that goes, that you draw a line under the sand with, or line in the sand with, and I'm able to move on moving forwards. So, long story short, is what I'm trying to just get across initially at the start of this workshop is that we have to recognize that overeating is doing the work, or when it comes to overeating, we're doing the work on not just the behavior itself, but what comes with it. So, I really hope that that makes sense. What I really want to get across now is the fact that overeating is a symptom. It's not the cause. So just like any symptoms that exist within our lives, if we have a headache because we're dehydrated, we need to fix the dehydration, not necessarily the headache. And that's exactly what I want to get across here, is that overeating is a symptom of a bigger issue. That bigger issue is restriction. So restriction is the number one driver of overeating. And if you've followed me for a while, if you followed a few people in the space in which I exist within nutrition, you may or may not have heard this before. There might be a few of you sat here thinking, well, I struggle with overeating and I don't restrict my food. And what I want to hopefully highlight here is that restriction can take many different forms. The three main forms are physical, mental, and emotional. What I also want to get across here is that restriction in all three of those domains can happen subconsciously, can be happening subconsciously. So they may be happening and you not even realize it. I see this a lot with the types of clients that I work with. These are women who have dieted on and off for years and years and years and years. I work with women in their 50s, 60s. My oldest client is 72, which is incredible. Some of those ladies, I'm sure maybe like yourself, have been dieting since their teens, which is heartbreaking. But what happens here is when you've been exposed to diet culture in this way, this big yo-yo dieting industry, is you have likely picked up behaviors, thought processes, thought patterns, habits that have now become normal to you, that when we start to highlight them and pick them apart, are actually restrictive behaviors that exist for you both physically, mentally, and emotionally. And you might not even realize them at the time. And this is what I want to draw some attention to. So just to summarize that, is that restriction is the number one driver for overeating, and restriction itself is a little bit of an umbrella term for those three kind of things that come off the back of that. So we'll start with the easy one. We'll start with what I guess is most common among the ladies that I work with, and also a lot of the people that I speak to on email and Instagram and all those sorts of things. Physical restriction. So you can see here, I've given the example of a 1,200 calorie diet. This doesn't just have to be a 1,200 calorie diet. Physical restriction looks like trying to stick to any sort of unrealistic low calorie amount that is not right for you. It looks like skipping meals. It looks like removing food groups. It looks like always having this kind of subconscious fat loss goal in the background that forces you to focus on smaller portions or eating less, or always looking for that lower calorie, healthier alternative. What happens here is that your body is not getting enough of what it needs, and you feel out of control. You end up overeating, whether it's that day or in subsequent days, because your body is trying to survive. Your body is screaming out for food and trying to survive. So you can see this kind of pattern here. Very low calorie diet. Couple days later, very, very hungry, overeat at night and or the weekends, feel like a failure, the guilt and the shame that comes with that, then it's I'll get back on track. This is a bit more of a picture of, I guess, how it could play out through the week. So you can see here the graph on the left is someone who is sticking to 1200 calories Monday through Thursday. Come Friday, social occasions happen, weekends happen, cravings happen, you're very hungry. It's very hard to stick to 1200 calories. That is not a you problem, that is the diet problem. And you end up having 3 very, very high calorie days there, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, before you go, okay, get back on track. On the right-hand side, you can see here a depiction of someone who eats slightly higher calories throughout the week. So we've got about 1650 calories there. So a little bit more flexibility, but still well within the range for most people to lose fat. Then you can see they've allowed for a little bit more flexibility there on the weekend just to account for, again, a social occasion or two. What's really interesting here, and this is something, again, I go over with lots of my clients, is you can see here actually the average calorie amount per day is lower here on this right-hand sided graph compared to the graph here on the left. So actually it would be this green graph here that has the more flexibility person, the green person, let's say, the person who has the more flexibility and allows for more flexibility through the week and through the weekend would actually see greater fat loss results over time. Moving on to mental restriction. So this happens even if you allow yourself, to eat the foods you can see on the screen. If when you eat those foods, you have labeled them in a way that they are bad, you believe they're unhealthy, you believe you're doing the wrong thing, you believe you're cheating on your diet, what happens is when we assign moral labels to foods, when we inevitably eat those foods, we take on those moral labels. We take on that connotation. So if I have eaten a donut that I believe is bad for me whilst I'm trying to lose fat, I then feel guilty for doing that bad thing. And this also creates this kind of difficult mental, almost like cognitive dissonance, because your brain doesn't feel safe because you are eating something that you have labeled as bad or dangerous or unhealthy. And what happens is when we have restriction in thought or a restrictive mentality, that causes rebellion in behavior. So we tend to go, oh, well, I've ruined it now. I'm going to eat as much as I can, or I'm going to make the most of it whilst it's here, or you know, that fudge it mentality, that screw it, I'm here now, I may as well keep going. So that is a form, one of the many forms of mental restriction. So even if you are maybe actively allowing these foods in your diet, the beliefs that you hold around these foods are the things that are potentially contributing to how out of control you feel, the overeating behaviors that come off the back of it. Then we've got emotional restriction, and this is a massive, massive one. This is one that tends to be something that comes up in a lot of the kind of deeper work that I do with clients. Once I've got to know them a little bit better and we start to talk about kind of wider lifestyle, and I say, what brings you joy? You know, what excites you in your life? Or how do you comfort yourself after a hard day or a stressful week? And what we have to realize here in the space of kind of emotional restriction is when food is our only source of relief or comfort or joy or excitement, it makes sense as to why it holds so much power over you. And what I want to really reiterate here is that the issue is not the food itself. It's the unmet need that exists within your life. Potentially, you're going through a stressful period, anxiety, depression, sadness. You're in need of comfort in a way. So the issue is not the food. The issue is that you have an unmet need and you don't quite yet, you're not quite yet equipped with the emotional regulation tools to be able to support yourself with that need beyond food. Equally, if food is the only source of joy or excitement or love and connection in your life, is when we rightfully seek joy, excitement, love, connection, the first thing you gravitate towards is food. So this is about, again, looking beyond the food and looking at how can you equip yourself. And this is again a big part of how I support my clients with emotional regulation tools so that if and when they are stressed or sad, we have a couple of tools to turn to in addition to food. This is never about removing food as that coping mechanism for stress. This is about making sure that you have a few things that you can turn to as well that actually help you navigate the stress, because the reality is that food doesn't help you navigate the stress. You eat the food, the stressful situation is still there at the end of it. It's also, as I mentioned before, looking at your wider life and going, where can I add things that fill my cup beyond food so that I have these things that are leaving me feeling full of life, that are leaving me with drive and purpose and ambition, all parts of how we as humans live a full and happy life. So, how do we begin to work towards feeling more in control around food? What I will say is that it doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen pretty quickly with the right support. I have clients that come in and do my 8-week program, Bloom, which is my program that is specifically designed for women who want to stop overeating and feel more in control around food in 8 weeks. After a week, sometimes even 2 weeks, there's messages in the group chat being like, I've got my favorite biscuits in the kitchen and I've had to and I've put the packet back. And then at the end of the 8 weeks, those packet of biscuits are still there. So I want you to know that change is 100% possible when you have the right support. I also want you to know that it doesn't take as long as you think. What we do have to recognize, like what I mentioned before, is in order to stop overeating, you must stop restricting. So this encompasses you becoming aware of any restrictive patterns that exist in your life. And again, I've gone over a couple, not all of them, but hopefully there might be some light bulb moments going off. What we have to realize here is that most diets that exist within the world we live in and on social media are focused on restriction. They are focused on eating less and cutting out your favorite things and removing that and smaller portions and low calorie this and healthy swap that. We have to flip that. We have to behave differently if we want to see different results. If you are trapped in this cycle of yo-yo dieting, doing really well, overeating, restriction, overeating, that cycle, we have to accept that what you have tried in the past, what you still might be trying now, and maybe any behaviors that you've identified that you have picked up along the way have to be let go. So we have to flip that. Inclusion over restriction is how I kind of define that. So this inclusion-based approach to eating is the backbone of Bloom, the program that I mentioned. And it's about leading with questions like, how can I, or what can I add to my plate of food to support my satiety levels? What can I add to my diet today that might support my health? What can I include more of to support my fat loss goals? So again, this inclusion-based approach to eating absolutely supports health and satiety and just general well-being and an overall fantastic relationship with food. But equally, it can definitely support fat loss too. And this is how we should be approaching our diet. So rather than thinking, okay, tomorrow's Monday, I'm going to cut out my takeaway, I'm going to remove my snacks, I'm going to empty the chocolate from my cupboard. It's about going, okay, how can I plan my day in a way that I have plenty of protein because I know that supports me staying full for 2 to 3 hours. How can I include, making sure I have, two or three handfuls of fruits or veggies per meal because I know that gives me lots of fiber and vitamins and minerals that support my health. When you begin to lead with these questions, not only are you actively including things that support health, satiety, longevity, fat loss, weight management, all the things, but naturally your brain starts to switch from a place of scarcity. So this idea of going through your day like, okay, I need to avoid this and what can I cut out? And I can't go near the cupboard and I can't walk down that aisle in the supermarket. That's when your brain is in a place of scarcity, is naturally in a stress state. When we begin to flip the switch towards this place of inclusion, we begin to come into a place of opportunity within our brain and it starts to calm down. It's a much happier and peaceful place. The byproduct of all of that is when you start to focus on foods you can add to your life, that you can add to your day, that you can add to your plate, naturally, the things you want less of, the things that are less supportive of your goals at the time, start to reduce naturally over time. So, number one, finding healthy control is switching from this restrictive mindset to this inclusion focused mindset. This is another concept that exists as the backbone of the work that I do, something called food neutrality. If you have ever listened to my podcasts, you will have heard me talk about this before. It's one of my favorite concepts because ultimately it's such a powerful one. And again, we have to look at traditional diets and think that through the lens of traditional diets, they view food as protein and calories and energy and what that food does for fat loss. In my opinion, that's an extremely reductive and unhealthy and just narrow-minded way of viewing food because food is so much more than that in our lives. A healthy, balanced life is one where all foods hold a place if you want them to, unless you have any allergies or medical conditions that require you not to eat a certain thing. But this is what food neutrality is. It's about recognizing that those foods there on the left, so our kind of minimally processed whole foods, colorful fruits and veggies, proteins, etc., they provide us with things that support our health. They support our healthy years on this planet. They aid our muscles and joints. They support weight management. They provide helpful vitamins and minerals to support our mental health. They're all the things that they add to our life. Equally, the foods on the right-hand side, we can see there. So our more highly processed foods, our more kind of packaged foods, are high sugar, high fat, high salt foods. Whilst they don't provide much in the way of health, they do provide a lot in the way of joy, comfort, connection, time spent with loved ones. They're part of how we celebrate. They're part of how we show love and receive love. They're, central to birthdays and weddings and funerals and wakes and things like that. Both are equally important in our lives, and food neutrality is just recognizing the different things, the different gifts that both of these foods add to our life. Ultimately, what we have to recognize is those foods there on the right-hand side are always going to be part of our life. They're always going to be central to Christmas and birthdays and any sort of celebration. And we need to be okay with that. We need to value that because ultimately you avoiding them for the next 12 weeks on your next fat loss challenge that you do will only worsen your relationship with food. It will make it more likely that you overeat at the end of it. And it will also make it more likely that any results you do see in that 12-week fat loss challenge will be unsustainable. Because at some point, you're going to have a birthday and a Christmas and a holiday and a weekend away that come up, and you're not going to have a clue onto how to manage that or to how to feel in control of that because you've gone 12 weeks without them and you've not had to learn the tools or you've not had a coach supporting you going, okay, you've got a birthday coming. Let's look at how we can manage this weekend with you. So food neutrality is absolutely something you need to be open-minded to adopting because this is life. And if you want to see great results and maintain them for life, you need to understand, yes, how to navigate your normal mundane Monday to Friday week at work and, what meal prep might look like then. Awesome. But you also need to go, okay, well, I've got a weekend away and I know how to manage that too. So, maintaining a sustainable calorie deficit. What does that even look like? What I want to get across in this homemade visual is that there is so much that goes into our food choices beyond just knowing what to do or having the right meal plan or having the right set of calories. To maintain a sensible deficit and to maintain your results once you get them, which is arguably the most important part, you need to have considered everything here on the screen. So some of you may resonate with the saying, I know what to do, I just can't do it. That is something that everyone struggles with. So I want you to know you're not alone. And I want you to be able to differentiate the fact that they are two very different things. Knowing what to do and putting it into practice, two very, very different things. That's where accountability comes in. That's where having support, the right support comes in. But it's also where having a look at your wider lifestyle comes in and managing your exercise load, looking at your relationship with food, making sure you have tools to manage and navigate hunger, looking at the relationship you have with yourself, your stress levels, your work, your family life, your knowledge. Like, is it correct? Are you overcomplicating it? Are you trying to do too many things at once? Are you considering the things that are maybe existing as the cherry on the cake, but not the first layer of Victoria sponge there on the bottom that acts as the foundation? What is your sleep routine, your hygiene like there? What support and accountability exists within your life, and is it healthful for you? What are your emotional regulation tools that you have on hand? All of this is what needs to be considered when we're looking at maintaining a sensible calorie deficit over time. And like I said, the most important part is then maintaining your results in amongst a life that you love. And again, this is why traditional diets do not work long term for fat loss. Sure, they work for 8 weeks. Most people can stick to a fat loss plan for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, for 4 weeks. Most people don't struggle with the fat loss element on a short period of time. Most people struggle when life starts to get in the way. Most people struggle when the diet finishes at 8 weeks or 12 weeks and they go, well, what the hell do I do now? I've got a hens weekend coming up. So we have to recognize again, traditional diets do not work for long-term fat loss. And again, I really, really, really want to point out here, this is not a you problem. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You're not lacking willpower. The fact that you maybe haven't been successful up until this point. The dieting industry in Australia is worth $40 billion annually. They quite literally profit off the fact of getting people in for repeat business. That is how the model works. Diets, traditional diets, are not set up for long-term success. They are set up to get you the best result in the shortest amount of time. That requires restriction. It doesn't allow time to go, hey, Dom, tell me about your family life. Like, what goes on in the evenings at home? When do you find you're most snacky or picky? Like, do you have tools in place to set some boundaries to make sure you have some time alone in the evenings so that you can de-stress? Traditional diets don't do that. So when it comes to maintaining a sensible and sustainable, I guess they're interchangeable calorie deficit. This is a visual that I like to bring up a lot because it accounts for what we're looking for in terms of something that is sustainable and flexible over time. What this demonstrates here is that you can go over your calories. You can eat more than normal. You can eat more than you think you should have that day, and you can still lose fat. And again, this is not me saying that you have to track calories, but this is just making sure that you need to have an awareness of this fact to be consistent over the long run. What we can see here is that deficit range. So a calorie deficit is not just one set number. It's not this arbitrary 1,700 calories that the calorie calculator online spat out to you. It is a range of numbers. So for the average female, give or take, a sustainable calorie deficit might look like 16 to 1800 calories, let's say. When you understand that, when you actively practice that, it allows for flexibility, it allows for some high days, it allows for some lower days, and it's really, really, really helpful in avoiding this all or nothing thinking when it comes to, oh, I went over my calories, or I ate an extra snack today that I didn't plan for. Oh, screw it, I've ruined it, overeat, etc., etc. We all know what happens next. So we need to live and breathe this realistic approach in that a deficit is arranged, just like a maintenance number is arranged too. So you can go over your calories and still be in a deficit. You can go over a little bit more and you might even just have had a day at maintenance. Equally, you might have gone over by a lot and you're in a surplus for the day. What we have to recognize is yes, these are all ranges, but also our results are based on what we do most of the time. So one day in a surplus versus 6 days in a gentle calorie deficit, we're going to lose fat over time. So not only do we need to have the mentality and the healthy relationship with food to support this level of consistency, we also need to have the actual realistic awareness of what is fact and actually how fat loss works over time. This is why if I have clients who track calories, which to be honest, very few do, I think about 90% of my 90% of my calories, 90% of my clients don't track their calories, but of the roughly 10% that do, they have a range target. I would say to them, hey, I'd like you to stay roughly between these two numbers and let's see how we go. So that is what we need to have a big awareness for moving forwards. This is, I guess, a comparison between shame and guilt there on the left-hand side and self-compassion there on the right-hand side. And you might be thinking, excuse me, what the hell does this have to do with staying in a calorie deficit? Self-compassion and improving your relationship with yourself and your food, as we know, must come into this as well. And this isn't just my opinion. We know from the research that those who have higher levels of self-compassion scores are more successful at losing weight and more successful at keeping it off in the long term. So we know across many published research papers that high levels of self-compassion scores equate to better dieting success over the long run. And again, this is why there is a specific week on self-compassion and body image in Bloom. I believe it's week 3, I think, because ultimately you need to have the tools to be able to manage the hard days, the failures, the slip-ups, the periods of overeating, because they're going to happen to everyone. And that's a normal part of the process. Self-compassion is what allows us to overeat once in a while, to reflect afterwards and go, okay, that was a bit tricky. That was hard. That felt really uncomfortable. But I know that I'm human. I know that part of being human is making mistakes. And then it's about going, okay, I wonder how I can extend some grace and some self-compassion and some kindness towards myself today. And ultimately, it's that self-kindness that allows you to go, cool, okay, I'm going to dress in some loose-fitting, comfortable clothing today. I'm going to practice some gratitude and I'm going to take myself on a little walk at nature at lunchtime and get some time out in nature and some sun on my skin that allows you to go back to normal and have that one night of overeating be that one night of overeating that then ends up not ever affecting you and your results in the long run because you've just been able to come back to normal and you've not had this inner turmoil that happens on the left here when we are in this cycle of guilt and shame. And what happens is we overeat and we go, screw this. I'm a failure. I'm broken. It's all my fault. There must be something wrong with me. You internalize that. And that's what leads to what we call escalation in the research. So escalation is either you continuing to overeat because you're like, well, what's the friggin' point? Or it can often be like compensatory behaviors. So proceeding to go, I'm going to restrict today, or I'm going to over-exercise today, which ultimately just exacerbates the cycle of overeating. So that's the difference between the two there. I hope it's evident that we very much want to be sat here on the left, or on the right, sorry. And that comes from working towards a more self-compassionate relationship with yourself, working towards making sure you have tools to support that relationship with yourself, but also have the tools to support your body image. Like I said, it's I believe, week 3 in Bloom. Like we have a specific week where we go through that. We make sure that those clients, my clients in Bloom, have those tools. This is the final slide. Maintaining a sustainable deficit looks like this. This is one of my clients' weight graphs. One of my incredible clients, Megan, I'll name her. She she won't know, but she will remain semi-anonymous, but I don't just want to refer to her as just a client because she's not. She's incredible. Megan was someone who came to me. She must be late 30s, early 40s. She had been dieting since her teens. She had been on and off. She would class herself as someone who had done everything under the sun. She also had a gastric band fitted at age 25, I believe. Proceeded to lose 45 kilos and then over the subsequent years gained it all back because she had some physical manipulation through the surgery, yes, which I'm not absolutely not against anything like that, medication surgeries. But what was apparent is that her behaviors hadn't changed. In October 2023, so just when this graph was cut off, she joined Bloom. And over the coming year and a bit, she proceeded to lose over 25 kilos now, with periods of tracking, but mostly periods of not tracking, and in amongst a very busy, tumultuous life. What I want to point out here is that arguably she was one that always knew what to do, but she had never had the right support with her relationship with food. And it was the relationship with food work, some of which we've touched on today, the mindset principles, again, a couple of which we've touched on today, that arguably allowed her to see this success and to maintain this consistency. What I really want to point out here is these little weight spikes. So here, 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 and this big plateau here, weight spikes, plateau, plateau, plateau. This is a normal part of the journey. And you need to, A, be aware of that. And you also need to have the tools to navigate that and to understand why that might have happened. This is also the beauty of when you take a more sustainable, enjoyable approach that focuses on not just eating less, but supporting your wider lifestyle as a whole. And you can not only feel better with regards to fat loss and losing weight for health, but feel better in terms of the energy you have, your mental health, your control around food, less bouts of overeating. That's what makes this sustainable, because there would have been no reason for Megan or any of my clients to give up on this journey when they see a weight spike, because they're like, actually, what I'm doing, even though my weight spiked this week, I feel great. I have more energy. I'm sleeping better. I'm more in control around my kids. I have better mental health. My moods are more stable. Anything that forces you to give up, to restrict, to eat less, to do all the things that we know traditional diets do, is not enjoyable. And so when these weight plateaus happen, when these overeating episodes happen, of course you throw in the towel because you have no reason to want to get back to it and you have no reason to want to continue with it. So again, I'm showing you this. I'm showing you Megan and her incredible progress that continues, that this is a realistic picture of what fat loss looks like, weight spikes and all. And that had she thrown in the towel here, she would never have got here. So that's why this has to be a physical and a mental journey. You have to have the mindset tools to support this.